So we go from talking about the U-17 qualifiers. We have those 12 teams. Now let's talk about the U-20 qualifiers. Canada just announced its roster for that, and it is fascinating for me. A few holdovers. So you have the opportunity sometimes with some young players when they're a little bit underage that they can go through one, two, maybe even three cycles at youth level. If they're truly that talented, Annabelle Choukou gets to go do that. So does Geneva Hernandez Gray. So let's go over this roster here. So this is the qualifying round. Canada's set to play Trinidad, Dominica, and Bermuda being the third nation that they'll be playing. And qualifying goes, top your group, you move on, and that kind of looks through. Let's look at the roster and kind of have a conversation because I've seen some comments online where it kind of looked one way, and if you really look at it, it still is. But let's go through this roster as it breaks down. So, as listed on Canada Soccer's website, we have Olivia Busby, Sophia Cortez Brown, Noelle Henning, Jidia Collin, April Latang, Ines Numarani, Iba Ucheng, Jeanette Okiki, Stephanie Shkuli, Sienna Gibson, Ava Greco, Geneva Hernandez Gray, Ella Kettles, Tegan Melnhorst, Juliette Perrault, Kira Blundell, Annabelle Choukou, Natal El Mokelb, Kaylee Hunter, Leah LaRouche, and Kira Martin, with some alternates being Noelle Sather, Emma Yee, and then some training players. Um, Kayla Yablonsky, Leanna Tarasco, Ashley Roberts, Esther Broussard, and Lael Hill. People point out Lael Hill because that's Grant Hill's daughter. For those of you who follow old school NBA, it's weird saying the NBA is old school. It's from the 90s. Oh, I'm old. Anyways, we have some carryovers. Noelle Henning, even Jeanette Okiki, Judea Collins, Geneva Hernandez Gray, and the current youth leading scorer, record holder for Canada, Annabelle Choukou, are on the squad, with some names that are coming from the U17s before. I've been kind of charting this through, kind of seeing who's able to make the leap going through, because you don't want to lose track of this. It's a fun way to keep track of that. I know other people do that. Shout out to WSoccer.ca as well as Rise Above. I'm sorry, Rise Higher, like vegan restaurant in Niagara. I saw this refrain going around on the internet where it's like, oh, it's so nice for them to finally start to look further than the development centers. And my response to that is, are we really? I know this is a new leaf for Canada soccer fans, and especially when you have the only holdover from the previous regime being Cindy Tye. The thought process is, oh, look, they're not from NDCs anywhere. Well, that's not necessarily the case. The collegiate sides have typically, sorry, the U-20 sides have typically had more collegiate players in them, but within that conversation comes reality as their academies were national development centers. So it's a little bit of a misleading fact. It's a bit of a misleading stat, to be perfectly honest. Yes, you have the occasional player who played specifically American, right? You think back to the 2022 side, the Zoe Burns, Simeon Wujo. Ironically, both those players were able to get call ups for the national team. And Olivia Smith, who's probably more, those three, honestly, outside of Burns, that 2022 group have given you three really contributors to the senior team, with Zoe Burns probably starting to knock on a very loaded fullback position for Canada. But I digress. Right, we look at the 2023/24 side. Right, that side you have the Marcassinis of the world, the Maracas. I'm still high on that side, my Archibald and the likes. But this is going to be interesting. I don't necessarily foresee a problem with this side qualifying, just because I think the talent that Canada has at its disposal, not to mention where those players are playing, gives them the edge. They have one player, arguably two, you could say, should be playing professionally right now, right? Looking at, yes, you have some NDC players, Busby, Henning, for example, are NDCers, but at the same time, Kaylee Hunter just signed. And we're going to see this trend where we're not going to see as many players maybe going to the NDCs because you have the professional option. So a player, prime example, like a Kaylee Hunter, can you get her into a professional setup, let her train, let her go, and then see what you're able to create from there? I'm very much curious to see what that is. But yeah, this notion that, oh, now we're seeing players not from NDCs. The reality is most of these players do come from NDCs in one way, shape, or I said most. And that's just the reality of how it works here in Canada. We don't have the professional setup up until now. And most kids who are in universities got them from playing at clubs or playing from NDCs where they're able to get recruited. So you're not going to really see that shift really happen too much, especially on the U-20 side. Though I am curious to look at this. I wonder what the league's starting to get going, especially when we factor in when qualifying is going to take place for U-20, the championship round, that is. Yeah, it's not fair to look too much ahead, but you think of like the Stewart twins, 17 years old, can be 18, maybe have another cycle, maybe once we get to the championship round, depending players like that, maybe they get the opportunity to sneak in. It might be a good thing for the NSL, but that's all different things. What am I looking for in their qualifying games starting February, end of February? Just continued work. You know you have a good goal scorer, yeah, a great youth goal scorer in Annabelle Chuku. You know you have Geneva Hernandez Gray. Question is, how do the kids start to interact with this, right? How does a Kaylee Hunter walk into this environment, though Alpha successful U17, just signed a professional contract? Can she integrate and incorporate with those players? Look at the other veterans, Ebo Ching, who played with the Whitecaps elite in the Women's Champions League here in North America here, right? Jeanette Okiki, who went to the World Cup. Looking at those players, can they give you a solid enough base and then allow some of these other young players to come in and play? Inez Nurani. I'm curious to see what she does as well. I like the flashes I saw from her at the U17, and it's tough with the U17s because they didn't make it to the World Cup, so you don't have that. Okay, here's the big stage that we get to watch them. The with Dominican Republic hosting, you didn't have that, but because it's the U20, you are looking at four teams going through. So Canada just needs to move on and give themselves an opportunity to qualify. But I'm curious. I do expect them to qualify just based off of the group that they have. I think they have more than enough talent to get through. But yeah, I'm very much curious to see what happens here. Also, curious to see how Cindy Tye is able to mold this group and kind of play them how she wants them to go. We're not going to see too many alternates. We're not going to see any of the training players until maybe later. But we do know typically with training players, you might see them, a few of them come through and swap out depending on what availability is. So I'll be watching for that. But guys, you let me know what you think. I know I've mentioned a few names and I mentioned all the names. You tell me which names I should be looking out for. And if you are getting ready and excited for the U20 qualifying, and if you are getting ready or excited to watch U20 qualifiers for the women's in Concacaf, let me know which team you're rooting for and who we should be looking out for so that we can keep an eye on some of the talent that are going to be coming through and breaking through in these next couple of years. Guys, thanks again. As always, I'm going to stop talking right here.